Welcome to the Aquarian Shaman broadcast. I'm Star Wolf, your shamanic host, and I'm here to teach you how to transform yourself and transform the world. Twice a month, we'll be exploring how to develop shamanic psycho-spiritual practices to support transformation while expanding your energy field in a way that can also support others. Each episode offers dynamic experiential guidance and teachings on how to safely enter a natural altered state of consciousness using the sacred breath. Additionally, we will discuss the importance of integration and grounding this medicine into your everyday life. Stay tuned. We're about to create authentic, embodied change that will surely grow corn for the future generations. Welcome, everyone. So good to see you here today. We're so happy that you can be with us with Aquarian Shaman and my very, very special guest, Aquarian Shamanic brother, Itzhak Beery. But before we launch into the interview, we always start with ceremonial space because I know that Itzhak shares this with me, that when we come together like this and we're sharing our medicine, it's wonderful that we can have these interviews, if you will, and radio podcast and video podcast. But for us, when we come together, it's not just an interview, it's medicine. And it is sweet medicine, if you will. And it is the shamanic world. So we begin today, like I always like to begin, with putting just a little bit of smudge here, not too much so the fire extinguishers don't suddenly kick in, but turning ourselves on, if you will, to a deeper, more relaxed, open-hearted state of consciousness as we let the smoke take our prayers wherever they need to go. Prayers for our loved ones. Mom, 93-year-old mom just went into nursing care just a few weeks back, and it's been a journey. She's right down the road from me here. I'm going to go see her right after this, actually, to send some to my mama, my 93-year-old mama, at Skyland Nursing, which is wonderful. She can see the mountains there. And to all those we love, whether they're four-leggeds or two-leggeds, winged ones, swimmers, croakers, tweeters, growlers, howlers, the standing people, the trees, and all the elemental world. And we also send the smoke out to perhaps those that we don't love. The disowned parts of ourselves that are manifesting in the world in such conflict, the shadows that have been projected outward. As my grandmother used to say, let's let the roosters come home to rest where they belong. Let's take responsibility for our own shadows, and perhaps the rest of the shadows will do the same. So we welcome in all the directions, east and south and west and north, above, below, and perhaps mostly within. Because as human beings, we have a huge impact on this world with every breath we take. So welcome into our ceremony. Welcome into the Transformation Talk Radio Aquarian Shaman series. And today I have a very special guest here, Itzhak Beery, and I want to tell you just a little bit about him. He's been around doing this work for a very long time, so it would take me probably an hour to just kind of go, and he does this, and he's done that, and he's gone to Ecuador. I could just, as we call it in Kentucky, where I'm from, we brag on our friends, brag on our kids and brag on our friends, and our dogs. So I want to brag a little bit about my friend. Itzhak Beery is an acclaimed author, globally recognized shamanic teacher and healer. He's an awesome public speaker and a trip leader. Raised in Israeli kibbutz. Did I say that correctly? I know what it is. I don't know if kibbutz. He had a fine art career and owned an ad agency in New York City. And wouldn't you know it, a midlife crisis transformed him from a skeptic into a dedicated spiritual seeker. Since 1995, he has integrated teachings from his indigenous and Western mentors, devoted himself to nurturing a new generation of healers. Yes. Beery was initiated into the circle of 24 Yakaks.
Yachaks.
Yakchaks?
Mhm.
Thought it might be something like that. Of Imbabura,
Mhm.
okay, in Ecuador, and with the Amazonian Kanamari Page in Brazil.
Mhm.
He founded the really awesome, famous shamanportal.org. If you haven't been there, check it out. He founded the Andes Summit, the SPQR magazine, and co founded the New York Shamanic Circle and Amaru Sanctuary in Ecuador. He received the Ambassador for Peace Award from the Universal Peace Foundation and the UN. Wow. And so much more. You've been a busy shaman. That's all I can say. A busy soul doing good work in the world. So thank you for being here, my brother.
Thank
And
you.
we're going to have some fun together. And but I just wanted to go ahead up front and um, just truly acknowledge you. I know how humble you are, and that you're just like, ah, it's, you know, but I know the amount of time and energy and commitment that you have put into your own healing and to assisting others in their healing and transformation, and to bringing these teachings forth in 3 different books and in all kinds of teachings and workshops around the world and with your teachers. And that's part of what I really want to bring forth today is hearing from you firsthand. First of all, welcome. But second of all, if you would tell us a little bit about how you were called to your path. Okay, what you just think back for that moment. What what was that turning point for you where you were just all in and you found this path and the spiral that it's been, and perhaps maybe bring us up to date a little bit of your journey. I'll just be quiet and listen to you. Really, I'd love to hear it as to where you are today and how it's changed perhaps from those first moments. So that's a big order. We can check back and forth. Let's just hear from you and your beautiful story.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure, and thank you for all of you watching. Um, yes, I am on this path from officially from 1995, so it's 30 years. But actually, I think that it's probably started the moment I got out of the womb, or maybe before. Um, I don't know. I mean, it depends on where you want to count. Uh, but I was never really aware or that I have any kind of special gifts. I mean, I was always a very good painter or an artist, but I never thought of myself as a in the spiritual realm or in definitely not in a what we call shamanic qualities, because in our kibbutz, which is where I was born, we were very much against any kind of spirituality or religion. We were a communist kibbutz. We
Mm,
believed in equality, in um, e- hard work. But I think that what we did do very well is we celebrated the holidays according to the agriculture cycle or to the climate cycle. So there was always the when you sow and when you take in, and when it was all about that, when the darkness is. So it was always about noticing the weather, the climate, the changes, the rain, the sun, the moon. This is what we celebrated in many ways. And we lived in a community where the community was guaranteeing the well-being of everyone, and which is like the principle of the shamanism. So we didn't call it shamanism. But also, our kibbutz was the first kibbutz of our youth movement, um, and it was established on a place where, in the sixth century or fourth century, where there was an old Israeli or Jewish Hebrew village, where the Romans had uh, traces too. So for for me personally, I was always, when I grew up in my kibbutz, Beit Alpha, I was always a return of some sort or connection to their ancestors. Actually,
Mm,
you see them all the time because you see the coins and you see the shreds of the tools that they use, and it's in the Bible. So it's written in the Bible. So there's this idea of our nation as returning to the place of the ancestor, the connection to nature and ancestors, the old songs, the dances, the culture. I think that if I look back, I was never really conscious of it until I started to do this work from Ecuador to look at my own roots. And it's quite surprising to me that we have that deep in ourselves, and where we get to an age where we don't have to prove anything to
mm,
anyone anymore.
mm.
We start to look deeper into ourselves to see what are we made of, and we discover quite an amazing world. Like, for instance, I never knew that I was a great grand son of a Kabbalistic rabbi and healer in Poland. I just never knew. I just discovered a few years back when before I went to teach in Poland. So it is kind of like uh, a rediscovering of who you are, or where you were and where you will be, uh, all at the same time. And I don't, feel sorry for not finding it earlier on. I think that it actually was quite good because it allowed me to develop my art career. I was a fine artist, and I did shows or exhibitions, and I sold work, and so that part of the fame part was there too. And then in advertising, I worked with big companies like Gucci, Revlon, Ferragamo, other things like that. So I never really felt like I did something wrong. It just gave me tools to do what I do now in a better way. But I do it in a more conscious way. So when I went through my transformation in 97, I went on a trip with John Perkins to Ecuador
Mm.
to work with the Shuar and the Quichua people in the Andes. That trip really transformed me. Well, actually, what really gave me that power, it was a book that I read by Hank Wasserman,
Ah, yes.
who was the first introduction to shamanism. Uh, I usually say that there is really no good shamanic book, because shamanism is a truly uh, against any kind of thing that is written. It's all about the verbal transfer of information, and
Right.
that information is always different from any time you tell it the story, depend on your mood and and where
It's
you
true.
are.
It's alive, isn't it?
It, it,
It's alive, and the story's still going, isn't it?
ex-
Because we're what the part of us that went through that initiation and that understood it at that level, we're still going through the initiation as the cycles turn and looking back and seeing it with new eyes, with new interpretations, right?
Always, yes, yes. Yeah, I mean, I studied for more than 12 years with Ipupiara, the shaman from Brazil, from the Uru'u tribe. And I always ask him to write all his beautiful wisdom stories and teachings and learn lessons, to write them down. I mean, and I knew he's going to die one day or pass on, and it would be so shameful not to have all of that knowledge in written. And he was always like, one day I'll sit down and I'll do it. And I told him, just record it and we can transcribe it. No, no. I think that, and it's the same thing with many of the indigenous people that I met, that they don't subscribe to this idea that you put words on in cages, not in pages, but in cages, because you're limiting their life, the force that because the the language is here for us to evoke some memories or some emotions that we carry with us, sometimes subconsciously, but to allow that to happen. But however, like anything in shamanism, everything is antagonistic, and of course they have truths to everything. But that book with Hank Wasserman was Spirit Walker was really changed my life, because the first time that I read a book that really addressed a lot of my doubts about humanity and about what are we doing here. And I flew to I bought it because it says that it's Hawaiian based spiritual adventure, and I like adventure. So it wasn't I bought it for the shamanism part, but I was crying on the plane because it really touches me. It really has brought all of that emotions that I thought that I was holding in, and I thought that nobody could understand that.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and so at the end of that book, he was writing about a workshop he did with Michael Harner, and so I came back to New York, and the very first thing I saw was that the Michael Harner would be here at the New York Open Center in New York. So I decided that it's too much of a coincidence that I went and I took a workshop with Michael Harner. But then I went to Ecuador with John, and I met my teacher, Don Jose Joaquin Pineda, and I work with the people with the Shua in the jungle. So the plant medicine and the limpia ceremonies, all of it is just totally changed the way I see the world, And I got into like a really deep depression.
Hmm. That's
Uh,
interesting, isn't it?
oh
That
yes.
that the depression that comes with sometimes with enlightenment or that awakening, it's like at least for me, just relating back to you, I have my own journey. I don't need to go into that, but there are different turning points where certain veils fall away and things are seen with clarity without all the BS around it or programming or what other people are saying or what society is saying. And there's sometimes there's deep rage that comes up, and or almost despair, or I'll just take the word almost out, despair, and an overwhelm. And it reminds me of that story with about the little Buddha, that when he was a baby, that his mother was holding him and bouncing him on her knee, and all of a sudden he opened his mouth and she fell in, and she was lost in there for I don't know how long, but she saw the whole cosmos and everything that ever was or ever will be and all of reality all at once. So however long she was in there, moments or eons, when she came back and went "Kook," and came back, she's just holding this little boy who's like, ah, the little Buddha. And but it completely, she could no longer see her son as just this child. She knew that he was the incarnation of God, and she'd just been seeing everything. So when we have those experiences, at least for me, there is a disillusionment. There is a type of ego death, and it's almost the feeling of, well, what's the point? Or now what? If there's no need to fix anything or or control anything or to just be or to whatever, and everything is as it should be at some level and doing what it needs to do, why do anything? Why be anything? I'll turn it back to you with that, but I'm just
Yes.
relating to this because I've been through several cycles of this in my life with different awarenesses.
So when I experienced what I experienced there in 1997, I came back a year later because I needed something to do there. But I was, um, I realized that the world that I lived before does not
Mm,
exist. And I could not, in the life of me, I could not understand how the two worlds work together. But most of it, for me, was how the unseen world or the world of spirit influence or create reality in our physical world. That was very difficult for me to hold. And I was like trying to figure out if the anaconda was really in my body, I just felt it, or I made it up.
mm,
I knew it was true. I did not want to handle it. And it's the same thing with the vision that I had with in Olympia. I was seeing things that was proven to be in reality that changes people's life. And I could not, in the limited way that our education system teaches us, or science teaches us, I couldn't bring it together. So for 8 months, I was just walking, trying to figure out how that could work. I was trying to figure out how to scientifically to explain it or not. And finally, I got so exhausted that I decided that it doesn't really matter.
that is the answer, isn't it? At some level,
Yes,
it's a
that
both and. I mean, it matters, but it doesn't.
exactly. So I can I do in my book I do a lot more explanation.
Mhm.
Well, I'm reading about the scientific explanations of certain spiritual aspect because it's very important to me. I mean, maybe because of that is to find out why they do certain thing that create results, even though we don't really understand. I mean, why? Why are you using eggs, or why are they using flowers, or why are they using rocks, and why are they using smoke? Why are they using plant medicine? There is a spiritual aspect of it, of course, but what's the science behind it, and how those people who lives in the high Andes
Mm,
and deep in the Amazon forest know so much about um, the cosmos, about health, about how our body works, the chemistry, the biology of all of it, without even once going to school.
mhm. Well, they were in a different type of school, wouldn't you say?
Well, they are in school all the time.
Right. And that their teachers, that just like you would listen to a teacher in school standing in front of you and explaining that they're listening to the rock or they're listening to the jaguar or they're listening to the elder who's already listened to those things. Because Grandmother Twyla used to say to me, and Grandmother Twyla, of course, was my Seneca Wolf Clan grandmother, and she would just say, sometimes it's hard for me to be in nature because everybody is talking to me all at once. And she said, and I have to say, stop it. I can't hear all of you at once. One rock at a time, one tree at a time. I'll get to you, you know? Or she'll say, take me to your leader. So the main tree, you know, and that was one of the first things she did with me when I went up to the reservation. And she said, and I had to go walk for several hours to a place we wanted me to walk to. And she said, but when you get there, I want you to find the tree that has called you there. I just felt so nervous I was going to get it wrong, you know. But anyway, I went out there and I'm like, is it you? Is it you? You know, listening, you know, and I was pretty good at hearing. I've always been clairvoyant and audio sentient. And, but finally I found the tree and there was no doubt that that was the tree. And I sat under it and fell asleep and it got dark and I was going to have trouble coming back. But was filled up, but I wasn't sure of what I was filled up with. But I knew that I was changed and I knew that there was something that had come into my DNA that was not there before.
Mhm.
So just in with that, there's so many ways that we're taught, you know, and
Yeah.
then she would say, you can't be taught. Wisdom can't be taught, but it can be caught.
Oh, that's a nice way of saying it. Yeah, yeah.
She liked to play with words like that, but she would just say, just be careful. If you go out there, they'll all talk to you and they'll drive you crazy.
So, I wrote a book. I mean, I wrote a book and or collected stories from many people, many shamans, practitioners, shamans who experienced this moment of changes and enlightenment. And it's quite fascinating to read that because it's so personal. I asked them to write stories that are not that are a little personal, not for the books, not for publicity, but for real emotional. And so there's beautiful. But one of the things that really surprised me was a response of one of the participants, one of the shamans from South America, and he felt that he failed me.
Oh,
And I said, why? And he said, well, we don't have one moment of enlightenment. And he said, for us, the indigenous people, I think he was from Mexico, he said that we think that every moment is a moment of transformation. Every moment that we are allowing it to transform our life, to see the miracle or the changes of life, that's a moment of enlightenment. And so we don't have the same what people from the north say that they're going to go to Nepal or to India
mhm,
or to the mountains or to exotic places to find themselves, to find enlightenment. We don't look for enlightenment. We look for the change, to the transformation that we have, and that happens every second of the day when we are putting our conscious
mhm.
miracle to the awe, to the mystical, to the beauty of this world. So it is every moment is a moment of change. And if we can live like that, not in the concept that we have to go find it outside of ourselves somewhere, that would be such a transformative for all of us on this earth.
It sounds like what you're talking about is enlightenment. You know, when people such as the Buddha who sat under the tree or the Bodhi tree or whatever and sat waiting for, and, um, was just sitting and allowing the process to happen, nothing specific, just allowing something to happen in that moment and to just be in that moment, that is the awakening or the awareness. And the thing about being mindful, it's like, okay, I'm going to be mindful. You've probably heard that where, I'm going to, it was Carl Jung that Carl Jung walked out of his office one day and he said, I'm going to remain aware and in an enlightenment state all the way home to, whatever. And he said, I am now getting my hat, I'm putting it on. I'm now getting my umbrella. I'm now opening my umbrella. And he said he was going to relish every moment. And he started to walk down the street. And about 2 days later, he thought, what was I doing? And he remembered that he was going to try to be enlightened, and he thinks it lasted maybe about 10 minutes. And then he got distracted as he walked down the city street and totally forgot what he was doing. And that was Carl Jung, who many of us respect and acknowledge. And so it seems like a dance with humans anyway, of wanting to be in the moment. That's an eternal, just kind of moment, like that, like looking into the Buddha's mouth and seeing everything is happening at all at once. There is no past, present, or future. It's all in the moment. And yet, as human beings, it seems like that maybe we're supposed to walk this path of duality, that it's not wrong or evil, that the opposites of light and day, good and bad, breathing in, breathing out, masculine, feminine, that all these so-called opposites are for some sort of reason of some kind. That maybe it's got a purpose. Maybe duality maybe we're not born in sin. Maybe we're born in blessing. And as Matthew Fox used to say all the time, maybe we're born in blessing, not sin. And perhaps this duality is a sacred world where we really get to play with those energies, the light, the dark, no difference. And see if we can really understand what that means.
My great-grandfather was a Kabbalistic rabbi, and his work was, according to the written pages that was found, was about the constant battle between the light and the darkness. So the 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 life purpose of or the purpose of the healer or the rabbi or the teachers is to bring the light from above into the lower world or the below. So the recognition that our world happened between two different forces, what we call the positive, the negative forces, and in between that, everything that happens. So we cannot really have a world, and I think that is one of the things that is so illusionary in the New Age spirituality is that the idea is that we can live in a total light world. Like that, even to give that illusion is dangerous.
Mm.
The idea here is that we have both of them to somehow create balance, and we have to find that balance between the two, not to eliminate light or not to eliminate darkness.
Mm-hmm.
They are necessary. It's like you can't eliminate male or masculine and the feminine. It has to be the two forces within you to give you the fullness of the human experience. The same thing with day and night. So yes, is a duality of world, but the duality is to create at the end, to create the balance that we need to find. And you can see that we are always like moving from one side to the other. Too much light is not too good, and then the darkness shows up. And when you have too much darkness, there's forces of the light that coming into play. And kind of like mentioning what's going on in the world right now is that
Yes.
this battle between the light forces and the dark forces, they are on display now. And in many ways, our transformation is to recognize that, not to
Mm-hmm.
run away from it, and not to think that all light is good and all black is or dark is good. That we have to find a way within ourselves, but also in a society, to honor that balance.
Well, we have to be careful, around things that like ethnic cleansing and, this whole thing of trying to get rid of anything of the earth, the dark, even dark skins, with people, um, and just go for the light. Now, I love technology. I love it that we have this technology. I don't want my technology to get angry with me because I have an effect on technology sometime with my energy. So I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for my cell phone. I'm grateful for those things. But for me, without my connection to nature, without being able to go out in my yard here and into the woods here where I live, and go to the creek and put my feet in the water, without being able to go down there and cry to the trees when I'm upset and saying, here's what I think about the world. What do you think? With my two wolf dogs, without that connection to those other life forces of the earth and the trees and the waters and the sunlight and the moonlight and the stars and my wolf dogs and the people that I love in my life and all those kinds of things, without that kind of deep humanity, the depth of being connected, instead of just kind of lifting off into light polarization and saying we're just going to ascend, because I do believe that we are ascending. We're also descending at the same time. If you want enlightenment, descend for a while. You'll be real glad to come back into the light. I know that firsthand, getting sober 43 years ago, that I understand that sometimes there needs to be a deep dive into the darkness in order to really come in more fully into the light. So there is this beautiful infinity, if you will, of light and dark, and a balance to it. But when it goes too far one direction, either totally into the shadow or light polarization, they create the same result, the same kind of evil. The light can create it just as, ethnic cleansing and, like what happened in Nazi Germany, they were trying to have the white race, those kinds of things. Um, so just, all these things seem to be, as I say, nothing's new, it's a spiral path. And you and I know that on the shamanic path, that, and I just would love your thoughts about that even more, especially bringing it current with, the spiral path. Is this people like peace, love, harmony, and understanding in the Aquarian age? But I think they forgot to say, but first, all heaven and hell will break loose. Everything will end as you know it. And you'll have to rebuild it, the new world, if you're going to build a new world. I would love to hear your thoughts or feelings, if you have any, around, quote, this Aquarian age, and around the shamanism that you've been involved with, and how we need that even more, this ancient wisdom, for these modern times to perhaps birth or rebirth the Aquarian age.
Well, we are actually now in the almost in the middle of this 80 years of transformation between one Pachacuti and the next. Pachacuti in the Quichua tradition, or in the Inca tradition, is Pacha means time, space. Kuti means correction of time. So every 500 years, the Earth is changing the axis, and the electromagnetic field changes, and there's a new consciousness comes to the world. And in 1990, in 1492, that when the Spaniard came, or the people from Europe came to South America and conquered it, that was the beginning of the masculine, or the eagle energy that swept across South America, killing many of them, or 90%, talking about genocide. Almost 90% of people, indigenous people in South America, was killed. The militarization, the occupation, the colonization, the gold digging, the oil, all of that, the military part of the South America happened for 500 years. For 1493 was when Atahualpa, the emperor of the Inca kingdom, was executed. And 500 years later, in 1993, this is kind of a very pivotal year in our awakening. Um, this is where more or less Michael Hunter and John Perkins and other people who went to Amazon and the Andes started to be taught by the shamans, because the prophecy of the condor and the eagle is that in 1993 or around that time, there'll be an awakening of the indigenous people. That they was, instead of hiding or being afraid of us, they
Mm,
wanted to share their wisdom with us in order for us, for the condor and the eagle to fly in the same sky, in the blue sky, in the dance of harmony and cooperation, and the return of the feminine energy. So we are now, and the last time with the 1492, it took about 80 years for the European to totally submit the indigenous people to their own rule. We are now 30 years into it. We have 50 years more to go to bring a whole new era of the return of the feminine energy. So I am very optimistic with all of that incredible vortex that we are living now, where people are losing their mind, they're losing their hold of reality, they are not really sure who they are. The old regime corporations, they are holding on with their fingernails to power and money, and we are just like swirling in that wind of change. But at the same time, we
mm,
see the rise of women and leaders in the world, in the Congress, in the Senate, in the prime ministers, presidents, and all of that. All around the world, there are more women now involved in everyday life. And of course, at the same time, that when women rise, or when gay rights, or when everybody else rise, the domineering old regime are trying to push it down.
mhm.
So we are now in a very volatile time, which I don't think that the old regime can do anything about. They will have to die. They will have to
Eventually,
die. They have to,
eventually.
eventually they have to give up control.
Hmm.
And I think that it would be best for all of us, because especially for our children and grandchildren,
Hmm.
to live in a world that is a little bit more in shamanic in essence, respect to the feminine, to respect to the earth, respect to our resources, um, more honoring to the world. So where we are now is is unfortunate, because a lot of people suffer, but it's also very optimistic or very exciting to see that change that is coming in, with the young people, with gay rights, with the acceptance of fluid gender, accepting or taking responsibility more of climate crisis, or the earth. It's not pretty, because we want the ideal, but as we said, that we have these two forces that are fighting between them, and I think when the dust will settle, and I hope to be here in 50 years.
Me too. Me too. The reality, at least for me, about in my personal life, whenever I've made a change, I've usually made a mess first. I'm going like, oh no, I've got to make this change and it's going to be so messy. It's going to take apart my life as I know it. It's going to upset some people. It's going to be, what are people going to think? All this, I still go through those things. I do. Some people are, oh, Star Wolf. I'm like, trust me, that doesn't change. A lot of things may change, like I might work through it quicker. I might care a little bit less, but it we're just human. This is, that's part of it. That's one of the things that we are. But what I want to just say about that, I could not agree with you more about what you just said. I believe, and I don't know if it's even a belief anymore because it's kind of in front of our eyes. We're witnessing it. I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen, except perhaps during the, I guess you could say the 70s and 80s when I was a teenager and a young woman, um, you know, the shadow coming to the fore in such a way of, like Martin Luther King and, President Kennedy being shot, just people that, that were trying to do good in the world. And everybody has their own shadows. We know that. Nobody's perfect. But that were trying to do, things with human rights and equal rights. And I mean, when we look at it back, it's not been that long that women couldn't get a credit card. It's probably a good thing, but anyway, at some level. But they couldn't get a credit card. They had to use their husband's credit card, things like that. Uh, my mom and dad, my mom was 93. My dad was 91 when he passed a few years ago. And I've had the honor and the task of going through all their love cards to one another over the years. They were married like 70 years or whatever. And all their friends, the cards to them. And I had these big boxes and I went through every one of them and looking through them, all these messages. And in the bottom of this box was this little book, and it's a like Debbie Joe or whatever's of how to run a household. And it's this book from the 1950s telling you like all these little like how you can get a bar of soap and put it on your chest of drawers, and you will open your chest of drawers easier and make it easier for your husband to get into his underwear drawer. And I'm reading these, and I'm thinking, okay, we have made a little progress, you know. But I
Well,
just want to come back to this for just a moment, that what you're saying, because I feel like it's got this importance, real importance to it, that we, the whole cosmos moves in this spiraling evolution of periods, as you call it. And the Hindus call it, Kali Yuga and things like that. The different shamanic peoples call it different things. And of course, Christianity has, it's words for it. And but in all of this, it seems that over and over there's cycles of change that happen at different times, at epoch times. And during those times, things rise to the surface so that we can get a better look at them. I worked in the field of addictions for many years. And when people would come in, I wanted to work with the clients who had hit the lowest bottom, because I knew they were the ones who were really ready to change.
mhm.
The other one that just got pulled over by the police and they're there for that reason, I didn't want to work with them. I want to work with somebody who his wife had left, his kids wouldn't speak to him, the dog wouldn't talk to him. He just like didn't have any money. His girlfriend was calling his ex-wife. That's the person I wanted to work with, because he was closer to the light. He was closer, or she, it doesn't matter, was closer to waking up the pain and the discomfort. And I just, part of my prayer and part of what, some of my spiritual teachers have taught me is that perhaps we need that darkness in the pearl shell, in the clam shell, to create the grit, the pain that will cause us to create the pearl of great price. And my follow up to that is, maybe wouldn't it be nice if humanity just needed one grit of sand, not the whole beach? You know? So I said that one day to a group of people, and people were like, yes, yes. I'm like, perhaps with the age of Aquarius, I'm just going to put this out here with all this up in our faces on the news every day, wherever it is, social media. Perhaps we can come to a time um, of awareness where we can embrace that darkness sooner and not have to go to such depths with such devastation. I'm curious about your thoughts about that. Do you think we're going to have to go all the way down, or do you think that perhaps we could have a higher bottom than maybe some of the past catastrophes on the planet?
Well, the truth is, I'm kind of observing it with a little fear in my heart when I see what's going on here. Um, one of the things that is so clear to me is that the darkness, or those people who are greedy, full of fear of existential survival, they don't have bottom. They always it feed fear feed more fear,
Mm, mm,
and and it's actually destroyed the people who they cannot convince. So you can actually see that happening in the United States now, that all those people who voted for that fearful toddler, they are trying to outdo themselves, become more and more dark and more cruel and more. So the people who have any kind of compassion being ganged on by even people who are even more. And the nature of it is that it's finally going to collapse because they're not can sustain itself. How you can't invent evil as big as it already is. So the only way you can do it is by destroying your all people around you. And that is it's a beautiful chance for people of light to bring more light or common sense or agreement or the feminine energy, compassion, and all of that
Mm.
to the surface. But until those that energy will not collapse on itself, it will be very difficult to change. I'm just sitting there waiting for that thing to collapse in my hands, and then we can shape it into. It's very interesting as a social, but like you said, I think that this is a moment of transformation,
Hmm.
truly a true transformation of this experiment. It's called the United States, and I do believe in goodness,
Mm.
uh, and I believe that the feminine is the strongest force of all,
Mm.
and I
I
think
bet your wife appreciates that.
I hope she does. Well, it's hard for me to admit, of
Yeah, I
course,
understand. Yeah.
but the feminine, the mother, the womb, that life-giving forces, it's the base. It's the base of everything. It's the hands that hold everything together.
Mm.
Men have the luxury of having mothers.
Mm. Thank you, Itzhak. This time has gone by so quick. I'm going to have you back on another time because I feel like we just got, to the surface and we went pretty deep, pretty controversial with some things, but pretty deep. And I'd love to have you back on. I love you. I respect you. I admire you. And I just feel your heart. And I hope I get to see you in the fall and we'll stay in touch. But in the meantime, where can people catch you next? What's your next journey? Or,
Oh, so I'm going to be teaching now in London and Amsterdam, starting the beginning of May for 2 weeks, and then I'm going back to New York and from there to the Andes Summit in Ecuador. So if you're so inclined and Pachamama is asking you to come and honor their teachers and the wisdom keepers of the high Andes of Ecuador, uh, contact me through my website. It's just my name.com or Shaman Portal, all of that. There's a way for people to reach. It is it is important for us not to do shamanic work in our kitchens
mm,
or in our living room.
yeah,
That's not enough. It's
to get
nice.
out into nature. Yes,
You have to go where the indigenous teachers are, and you
yes.
have to honor them with your money, with your resources to support their existence. And that's what I'm committed to, is not just to write books and to be nice, but it's also to allow them to the means to continue to keep this work going.
Thank you, Itzhak. I just so honor you and your lifelong legacy. And again, like I said, I'd love to have you back on a little bit later on to continue, like they say, the rest of the story. There's so much that um, we weren't able to get to, but what a rich and I would say juicy interview. Yeah. And so just to honor you and tell you that I love you
I love you too.
and I appreciate you. And brother, let's keep the faith and let's keep actions that show that we have faith. And I too believe, I still believe. So thank you for being with me, with the Aquarian Shaman, with Transformation Talk Radio today. I know that everybody that hears this is going to be touched in some way, and that's part of my ministry right now. I know it's part of yours, is to reach as many people as we can to say, hang in there. And we're going to do our best to trust these Aquarian times. And what did we think was going to happen? What did we think it was going to happen if we were alive during these times? And apparently we signed up for it. So thank you, and I love you.
Thank you
And
so much for having me, and for giving me the opportunity to deliver the message that the Pupiara used to say, that we are all shamans.
thank you.
We
I love that.
all have what it takes to heal people, to just listen to them, to drink water with them, or making them soup, uh,
Yes.
hug them. So we are all shamans, and we all have to take responsibility for being shamans.
Thank you for that. And that is the message of the Aquarian Shaman, that if we didn't know that before now, this is a good time to remember. So with that, we'll close, and thank you so much. Mwah. And let's stay in touch, okay?
Okay.
No ethers, and here, and in real time. This is Star Wolf, and you've been listening to the Experiential Aquarian Shaman broadcast. Transform yourself, transform the world. Join me every second and fourth Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio to awaken your inner Aquarian Shaman. Never miss an episode. Subscribe to my channel and connect with me on social media at Linda Star Wolf. For more information about my offerings and trainings, visit shamanicbreathwork.org. Thank you for taking this special time to journey with me.